What's up, everybody? Matt Modi here with Jedi Modi Sports Network. And in this video, I have a week 3 NFL parlay for you guys to hammer with me. What we are going to be doing is finding some money line favorites who we like to win straight up and parlay them together. I know that this is one of the more square things to do in sports betting is to find favorites and parlay them together, but it's quite fun and it can be profitable if done right. To confirm a couple quick rules about how I go about doing this. As I mentioned, I find some teams that are favored who I pick to win straight up. I don't go any more than 3 teams, so I try to find between 2 and 3 teams that you can parlay together, get as close to even money or plus money as possible, and then I put 1 unit on this parlay. I know it might be enticing to put more than that on it because you're betting on favorites, but we all know crazy stuff happens in sports and particularly in the NFL. So you always want to make sure that you are gambling responsibly. So I only put 1 unit on this moneyline parlay. To do a recap from last week, we got our moneyline parlay to cash. We had the Chiefs and the Cowboys to win straight up. Cashed both of those really without much of a sweat there. That brings our total results on these moneyline parlays. Granted, it's only been 2 weeks to 1-1, completely breaking even. I missed it in week 1. We cashed last week. Week 1 was for plus money. Week 2 was for not. We won 1 unit. So guess what? Completely breaking even so far. So as for week 3, I am going to have 3 teams that I like to win straight up. Our first leg, we are going to go with the Jaguars over the Texans. Jags to win straight up. And I will say this parlay is offered on FanDuel, so if you want to go ahead and just start adding the teams now, you can. So for the Jags, they were a team that I was high on as a sleeper heading into the year. They've looked okay through 2 weeks. They looked a little bit clunky against the Colts, but ended up, and this was in week 1, obviously, ended up pulling that one out, winning by 10. In week 2 against the Chiefs, not a super impressive showing, especially offensively, but they did look really well defensively with how well they were able to slow down the Chiefs. Now, through 2 weeks, the Chiefs' offense isn't quite what we're used to seeing with Mahomes, but still, it's always impressive when you're able to slow them down. And with that thought in mind, according to DVOA, the Jaguars currently have the 8th best defense in the entire NFL. So pretty good start for them defensively. Offensively is where it's been a struggle, and it was particularly a struggle last week. But I will say they did have 2 plays, separate drives that were really close to being touchdowns where the receivers, Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones, just couldn't quite get 2 feet down. 2 talented receivers, you expect to make those plays maybe half the time. So if it just rolls a little bit differently, that game could have also gone differently as well. Luckily, they are going up against a Texans team who stinks. The Texans are currently ranked, again, this is all according to DVOA, as the 4th worst team in the NFL. They got the 27th ranked offense and the 25th ranked defense, so they're not above average in anything. So the Jags, with a struggling offense, should have a ton of success against this Texans defense. The Texans are also banged up on the offensive line. Now, we don't know who's going to play and who's going to miss in week 3, but in week 2, they are missing 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. That is just a complete death sentence. Especially with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach, very confident that the Jags will be able to pull this one out as our first leg of the parlay. Next one, our leg 2, is the Bills over the Commanders. Again, this parlay is best offered at FanDuel. I will admit this one probably makes me the most nervous of the 3. It's been such a weird start for honestly both of these teams. The Commanders are 2-0. The Bills are 1-1. Looking at the Commanders, they really didn't look good at all against the Cardinals, the team that we all expect to be the worst team in the NFL. They needed 10 fourth quarter points to barely squeak that game out. Their defense looked good. Their offense was very hit or miss, kind of came alive a little bit at the end, but also not really. And then last week against the Broncos, they got out to a horrible start, was down, I think, 21-3. Then came back and won that game, was a little bit closer than it should have been at the end. But there were certain plays where they made Russell Wilson that looked like the old Russell Wilson. And then in the second half, we saw the Russell Wilson that we saw last year. So I really don't know what to make of the Commanders. It could have been a pancake start. Like, we could look at the end of the year that this was a false hope for a 2-0 start. But 2-0 is still 2-0, regardless of how clunky that it's looked. And the Bills, meanwhile, at this point, I think we kind of know the formula for the Bills. Do we get the Josh Allen that is spectacular and scores 4 touchdowns? Or do we get the Josh Allen that tries to be spectacular and ends up turning it over 4 times? We've seen both of the versions of Josh Allen so far. Week 1, granted against an incredible Jets defense, we saw the bad Josh Allen. In week 2, against a bad Raiders team and a bad Raiders defense, we saw the good Josh Allen. If we get the good Josh Allen, they can win the Super Bowl. If we get the bad one, they lose to Zach Wilson. Then on the Commanders side, Howell is kind of similar, not necessarily to the same degree, but he's pretty feast or famine as well. He can throw a really pretty ball. A couple of those touchdown passes in week 2 just were things of beauty. The one to Terry McLaurin, the one to Logan Thomas, perfect placement, looks pretty. But he can also be a little bit shaky as well. He can take too many sacks. He can be a little bit loose with the ball as well, turning it over too much. So I'm not necessarily sure I trust him to beat a good Bills defense, especially if the Bills offense is able to put up points. Sure, he won a shootout in week 2. The Broncos of this current version of Russell Wilson is just different. Overall, the Bills are the 4th best team according to DVOA, the Commanders being the 10th. I will say this game could end up being a little bit closer than the spread indicates. So yeah, maybe the Commanders do end up covering the spread, but I like the Bills to win outright as our second leg. And our third leg, this one's pretty obvious. Give me the Cardinals over the Cowboys. Not really sure I need to go into a ton of detail on this one. The Cowboys very well look like the best team in the entire NFL. Granted, sure, Daniel Jones and Zach Wilson, so the competition hasn't been there, but the competition isn't going to get any better in week 3 against this Cardinals team. Now, yeah, I will admit that the Cardinals have been a little bit pluckier for the first 2 weeks than I was expecting. I also think that the second half showed us exactly who the Cardinals are, and they are a team that is actively not really trying to win. So sure, maybe the Cardinals put up another fight to the Cowboys. I just think this is going to be a game where scoring is going to be hard to come by. We've seen what the Cowboys can do to bad offenses. That's exactly what's going to happen in this one. So I love the Cowboys to win straight up, cashing our third leg, giving us about -108 odds at FanDuel, about -106 odds at DraftKings. DraftKings has me limited, so I didn't bet it there. I took it on FanDuel, but it is best offered on DraftKings. I took it on FanDuel, as I mentioned, and that's all I got. So if you are riding with me on this Moneyline favorites parlay, comment and let me know. Other than that, remember to like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.